are now tuned in to the On Track with All My People podcast with your hosts, Amber Peters, A.K.A. Ms. P.
And Daytwan David, A.K.A. Dr. Change. Ain't nothing strange about it. A.K.A. Mr. David, A.K.A. Hey, yo, Miss.
Oh my God, Daytwan, can we just start the show already?
All right, y'all. Welcome back to On Track with All My People podcast. I am Daytwan David, A.K.A. Dr. Change, and we have our co-host,
Amber Peters, A.K.A. Ms. P.
So, Ms. P, we've been doing this and rocking with this for a while. One of the questions, because I don't know if any of the other episodes we have delved into this, but like, how did you kind of get started in the field?
Oh, wow. Good question. I actually got started. I was a teacher first. So let me preface this by saying that. But the college and career access work happened at YBC. Shout out to G-Dubs. I got to give them a big shout out because they're the reason essentially why I do this work, right? Probably one of my most favorite experiences that I've ever had was working with YBC students. Changed my life, honestly, for the better. There's still students that I'm still connected with to this day, but that start was the start of everything. I never would have even thought of myself as a consultant or doing any of this work if it had not been for that experience. So shout out to them. The only thing that kind of frustrated me about that experience was that, you know, the young people there, so I guess you would call it an alternative high school program, right? Like they are, those kids were undercredited, maybe didn't have enough regions to pass. And so this was kind of like a second chance for them. But the one thing that frustrated me was just that mindset, right? A lot of them couldn't see past today. Miss, I just need to graduate. Give me my diploma so I could go about my business, right? And then it was like, you know, asking them about like what they saw for themselves in the future. That was hard. It was like pulling teeth. And I'm just like, bro, like you're going to get the diploma. You're going to get it. We're going to make sure that you get that diploma. But outside of that, what are you going to do with it once you have it? And that's kind of where we got stuck. Did you ever experience the same thing?
For sure. So definitely worked it with a transfer high school in Queens. You described a lot of the students that were at that particular high school. They were overage, undercredited, meaning that at a certain point in time, they were going to age out and not really have a lot of avenues that was going to be supported by the public school system, right? So I had the same situation. A lot of these students were just like, hey, I can focus on today. I need to get these assignments in. And the only long-term goal, which may not have been long-term, was like trying to graduate. And beyond that, there was like, I'm not even thinking about that, right? So I think there was a lot of challenges for me in figuring out, like, how can I meet this young person where they are, still meet my responsibility of trying to get them to think about the long term while they're still in the present mind of trying to graduate. So for sure.
Yeah. And it's just like, you know, we got to talk about this. So, of course, because we are who we are, we decided to bring on a rock star to help us further unpack this. So we have with us Mr. Adon Cooper, the homie forever. He is a college and career coordinator for the Department of Education. He has over 12 years experience in college access and workforce development. He developed a special post-secondary programming for students with disabilities, and I was there for it. And I listened to this day. Like, honestly, y'all need to tap this man just to understand how he put that together. And he received the Superintendent Award for School Culture. Welcome, Adon, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here and so excited about to talk about this work because it's my bread and butter and something I'm truly passionate about. So thank you for having me.
And we're excited to have you. Super excited. I'm geeking because this, you guys don't understand. Like, we used to work so closely together, and just like to like see like where our work has taken us. I'm so excited to have this conversation with him.
Absolutely. I mean, we literally started together back at the YABCs and working for FAGs and all those other organizations. So yeah, we go way back like church slacks. We go
way back like church slacks. That's fire. That's a bar. That's a bar right there. If you want to see what other bars you got right now, because we're putting you on the hot seat, right? We are going to do our rapid fire. And so we need you to have that same kind of energy for these these 5 topics, right? So I'm gonna ask you to choose your top 3 of 5 different topics, and I'm gonna hold up 5 seconds, and I need you to get all 3 out by that time. All right.
Okay.
First
I'm
one.
gonna
First
try.
one. You got this. I believe in you, brother. First one. Top 3 favorite horror movies.
Oh, Insidious. Night on Elm Street, the first one. Candyman.
That's 3. Oh, you
Hereditary.
got them.
Oh, three.
This is your thing.
Horror's my favorite. Horror.
This
Sorry,
is your thing. Oh, you going in?
horror's
All
my
right.
thing. Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
We're gonna test it out. Top 3 places to travel.
Oh, top 3 places: Turkey, Antalya specifically, Jamaica. I just got back, and Costa Rica. I really enjoy Costa Rica.
Just locked it in. Jamaica's been on this podcast a couple of times right now. Where'd you just come from?
A lot. A lot.
I just came back from Ocho Rios, and it was my 3rd time being in Jamaica. And I'll have to say, now it's a different type of country. I enjoyed it so much more than I had in the past.
Love it, love it, love it. I'll be there in about 4 days. All right. Next
Yes.
up. Top 3 favorite work experiences.
Work experiences, having a student graduate by the name of Beyonce, making sure 90% of my graduates all had jobs, and working with a young lady who transitioned from dancing dancing at nightclubs into office work was one of my.
Yo, that's dope. Dope.
Wow.
Top 3 things to do on a staycation.
Staycation, I'm doing some kind of DIY project, like building a fireplace, or I'm reading a book. I'm reading a book called Find Boundaries, Found Peace by Nidra, I can't remember her last name. And lastly, I paint. So I like painting too. Those are the things I'll probably do on staycation. And sleep. I'm going to add that 4th one.
Fourth one.
Need some rest.
Dope.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this one is important because a lot of people disconnects and brings people together. And I've heard about you. All right. Your top 3 dishes to cook.
Oh, my friends love my baked macaroni and cheese and fried chicken, but I love making any kind of pasta Alfredo. And I learned how to make this thing called lobster langoste in Cuba. And that's one thing I like to cook as well.
Fire. You pass.
Yeah.
It's one of those.
Look, he got bougie with us.
I love cooking though. My dad's a professional chef, so I used to spend a lot of time in the kitchen.
Yeah, that last one, I can't even spell none of those words.
I love
Lobster
it.
something.
Right. I was like, wait, what?
It's like stewed lobster with red sauce.
Wait, what is it? Thank you.
Because
I was like,
I'm and garlic in a red sauce that you boil. And it's really, really tasty. You make it with pastelito. I'm lying. You make it with plantains and white rice, and you put it all together, and it's really good.
Oh, yeah. Nice. That sounds like a whole situation.
It was nice learning it too. I was with a local, and she taught me how to make it in her kitchen. It was really cool.
Oh.
See, and those are the experiences you should have, like when you're traveling, right? Like to kind of like connect with people, because like you finding out how to really cook the dish, and not like what we.
And it's cute because now that I'm dating, like people when they come over, I'm cooking them a dish that they've never experienced, and it's like, oh, I look like a catch, you know. I seem even more like a
heard
woman.
You.
I love it. I love it. Love it. So we want to kind of get more into your business. So like a little bit. Now we gotta go dig too deep, right? But we want to know, what's your story? Like, how did you get to where you are today? What are 3 aspects you think led you to where you are?
I think, trying to talk about my story in general. I think having parents, I have really young parents, and I think having young parents allowed me the freedom as a kid to explore a lot of things. So I didn't start in education in any way. I never thought I would work with young people. I thought I was going to be a celebrity. I was going to be a star. My mom got me into dancing after watching The Wiz at 7, and I kind of continued performing as a professional until I was about 23 or 24. But it was all those little things. I started as a dancer, then I went to high school for cosmetology and got my cosmetology license. I worked at every retail chain you could possibly imagine because I refused to work fast food when I was in high school. So all these little things kind of helped me transition into the work that I do now. But it wasn't until I injured my left leg in a competition that I realized I needed to utilize my body in a different way. Like the money I needed to make and sustain my life couldn't just be based physically on what I can do with my body. And then I bumped into my EOP counselor, and she was like, "Hey, why don't you help teach dance at this high school in the Bronx?" And working with them, it was just like, I can relate to these kids a lot more than I thought I could. And they listened to me. Like, they actually thought what I was saying was
Yeah.
important. And my transferable skills, that's the language that we use now. But before, I didn't have that language. I didn't know that being a performer, being able to connect with people and being relatable and doing all these little things that I've done in my past could made this whole unit, which made me and made me, special in some kind of way, and why young people really responded to me. So I think doing all those things, being a professional dancer, a cosmetologist, a retail specialist, and low-key a therapist for my siblings allowed me to become a college and career coordinator that I am today.
I love it. And I love the fact that she was like, listen, I'm not finna do nobody retail, so I need to figure out some other things.
I could
But
fold a
I also
t-shirt,
love
but
that
I
you
was
had
not
that
zipping no fries.
license.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So like, also like, cause I think that's something that we kind of want to bring up, right? Like going back to your workforce development, like you had a skill, a licensed skill that you can actually take out there and use. And I'm sure that plays out in your work now when you're like talking to young people about their future plans and just like, listen, like you can do this, but like in the meantime, in between time, you can also do this and save yourself from hours of standard because you have another skill that you can use. So I think that's pretty dope.
Yeah, when I got my cosmetology license in high school, when I got to college and undergrad, I ran a salon out of my dorm room. And that's kind of how I paid for my books. I didn't have any support financially from home. I couldn't work as much because I was way up, well, not upstate. I was in White Plains, but to me, that was the boonies, it wasn't the Bronx anymore.
Yeah.
So I used that skill set to help pay for things. And I think when I talk to young people, like you mentioned, I'm always relating it to what I can do. Like when they're talking about college and career readiness, it's like, you don't have to go to college right now. What else do you like doing? Do you want to do this instead? You can do this program for 6 months. And in the meantime, maybe we'll start going to college trips. You'll visit this campus. You'll see how this skill that you're earning now can maybe relate to maybe owning a business later and how you can do that in that kind of way. So I'm always thinking about how their trajectory could look and helping them see it and frame it with them. And I think what's really important is making sure that they frame it with you and you don't frame it for them. I think that really helps with the buy-in.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, you're speaking about a lot. So you see me turn to kind of side for those that are not watching us. You see me turn on the side. I'm taking a bunch of notes. I didn't expect to be taking so many notes because we didn't get to the heavy questions yet. But you talk about like the entrepreneurial endeavors and like being able to help young people to understand how it can shape their trajectory and how, the college piece can be something that is added as part of that trajectory at a later point. I want us to kind of ground this conversation for a second and help us to really kind of understand this population. We understand that alternative programs really are a great avenue for young people that really might have struggled in the traditional setting to be able to pursue. But even still, there are some challenges, right, in those spaces as well. What would you say generally are the challenges for students that are in alternative programs?
Yeah, so there's quite a few challenges I think that I've come across on a daily basis. And I think that it can be put in subsets. So at the school level, depending on how they're bringing college and career readiness, luckily for me, my program is built in. Like it's a DOE program. There's a particular department that's assigned to making sure young people have a post-secondary goal. But oftentimes I find that these programs are coming in as CBOs and it's not a part of the principal's report card. It's not really this big push. It's not a part of the school culture. And I think that's a huge barrier because like Amber mentioned earlier, Miss P mentioned earlier, it's this like, we just want to get you to pass the test. Just pass the test and then you'll figure it out later. That's not, to me, the most appropriate approach because while you have them, you should be giving them the gems to help them make the choices that they need to make once they graduate. And then I also find too, when students don't know what they're doing next, they usually linger. They won't take the test. They'll miss their test date. They'll do things to sabotage their ability to move forward because they don't have a plan for the future. So that's at the school level. Funding, of course, with these CBOs and other opportunities that, you have a program this year, you'll have these opportunities to take them on trips and do these things. Then next year you don't have the money and that causes the barrier. But I think what's really important to mention about barriers, systemically, the barrier is racism. The systemically is patriarchy. Those are the barriers. And I think oftentimes people think that being black or being a woman or being gay is the barrier. And that's not the barrier. That's your gift, but the barrier is all those other things. But if I'm really going to speak about transitioning into the college piece, one of the huge barriers that I find is that they're not really ready for students from alternative programs. You talk to a CUNY rep. First of all, when they got rid of the AccuPlacer exam, which I have my issues with that, but they gave us this like proficiency index. Our students at the start of the proficiency index weren't even being thought of. They had no idea what the schools were going to look like, how they would transition into a major college or a junior college. They had no idea what that's going to look like. And when you talk about SUNY, some of these SUNY schools won't even allow our students to bring their diplomas to them. It has to be mailed directly from the state, which gives them another 6 to 8 weeks. We're talking not even before COVID. Before COVID, you can get it in 6 weeks. Now, some of these kids have to wait 10 weeks. Now, for a program like mine, who has rolling admission, a student might graduate in May and want to apply to FIT. They're not getting to FIT for the fall because they just don't have enough time to apply and get the diploma to them.
Right.
They have to wait all the way to the spring. So what am I going to do with this young person who graduated in May, but they have to wait a whole year to do something? That's when the idle mind is the devil's playground. You have to really ground them and focus them. So there's a number of barriers that I think are in place. But I will say one of the things that came out of COVID that I liked was that schools became test blind. So you didn't have to have the SAT, and you could use certain waivers to qualify for your regents, and you were getting your diploma a lot faster. That was one of the barriers that I think was removed because of COVID. But aside from that, there's so many barriers in place for our young people, and it's unfortunate. But also for me and my colleagues, we're constantly reminding them and giving them realistic expectations on what the trajectory could look like in their timeline, because they get very frustrated and you can lose them. They'll show up today and you won't see them again for the rest of your life. And that's really the truth.
Yeah, and I feel this so hard. I feel this so hard in my spirit because it's like the minute that they did not get right, like the microwave didn't, the timer went off and the thing wasn't ready when that microwave opened, they are done. They are off this. So I think that's really important to say, is like, while we have them, we need to be figuring out with them, like, what is it that you want to do? How do I help you? Like really doing that work while we have them, because once they leave, and that was my frustration as well, is like, once they left, like, what is it that you can do? Right? You can't find them anywhere.
They change their numbers every so often, and they don't check their emails because they forget the password. So it's like, I need to get you while I got you.
Man, both of those.
Right.
Those are triggers for me. Both of those things.
Right.
So like, moving on, like trying to figure out, okay, how does workforce development programs like a co-op tech, or I see lots of these other different programs, right? Google has all these amazing certificates, and we have things like the Knowledge House, which is giving them like training in a few months to a year. Like, how do these programs like help with the students' trajectory?
So for me, we utilize those programs very frequently in my work now, because they give our students an opportunity to find something to do in the meantime. Because, semesters are relatively rigid. You don't get outside of LaGuardia, Kingsborough, or maybe Queensborough. There aren't many schools that start later into the school year. Most of them start very specifically. So to me, even if that wasn't the case, I think it's really important for our young people to figure out what they're really good at, what they really like. And while reading, writing, and arithmetic and all that other fancy smancy college stuff is important, if you don't know what you like, if you don't know who you are, you're really wasting your time and your money. Luckily for me, and I'm fortunate, I mentioned earlier, having parents that allowed me to discover who I was early on benefited me. A lot of these kids don't have that benefit. So giving them opportunity to do job shadow days, to do industry. We have something called Industry Insider, where they go to these companies and learn these things from execs. Having schools like Co-op Tech, having schools like, or programs like Harlem Renaissance Institute that gives you a degree in 6 weeks to a year or something like that. It gives them a chance to really learn themselves, learn what they like, what they don't like, and then pivot to whatever moves them in the next direction. It could be college. It could be another program at that same institute. It could be an extension to a program or a license that they already have. It really is about helping them build the blocks, because again, everything you do is a transferable skill. There's nothing that you've done in your life that you cannot relate it to something else. I am a firm believer in that. There's nothing you can do. if you know how to clean a chicken, you know how you got a skill set. That means you don't got a weak stomach. That means you have hand-to-eye coordination, and you got it's a silly example, but it's an example because it's true. If you can do one thing, you can do many things. You can.
I love it. I love it. And also like the quick wins, right? Because like for me, in them getting the if I can do this in 6 weeks, right? And like I get acclimated to a work environment, right? If I am kind of like learning these little soft skills, how to like interact with other people and stuff like that, it feels good to me. And now when I look at a bigger goal like college, it's like, oh, I could do this. I did this program. It was great. Now, like, what's the next step to this? Like, how else do I extend this experience, this wonderful experience I had? How do I extend this experience so that I'm also making the kind of money I want to make later on? So I think that's spot on.
I love that you mentioned the small wins. I didn't mention it, but that's a huge piece to it too. Having them see themselves in a light that they may have never seen themselves in, and it happened so quickly. Like I was able to earn my HSC, and then I was able to earn this credential, and I was able to earn this credential, and now a year later, I have all these things that I didn't even think were possible. Those little pieces really help build their character and their self-worth.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
A lot was shared. A lot was gems were dropped here, in particular, talking about the transferable skills. You being able to say you have one skill, it can be transferred to many other skills. I know you joked about the chicken, but it's real, right? It is super real, and we need them to start thinking about things in this way. But what's interesting is that a lot of our young people, they call it finessing, right? They can finesse other situations, right? But when it comes to these real life scenarios, we need them to be able to apply that finessing skill to what exactly you're talking about, to get those small wins, to position themselves to kind of think broader and more creatively about what it is that they can do and how they can get there. With that in mind, I want you to kind of use your brilliance, because clearly you understand the field, you understand the population, you understand the resources. How do you coach a young person from where they are, with maybe they're not feeling confident about what it is that they're trying to do next, to getting to those small wins and victories? Like, what does that process look like of coaching them through that?
Yeah. So that process, depending on the student, but generally speaking, the process to me looks, so I learned this specifically when I was working at a particular charter school for students with disabilities. And for me, it was a brand new population. I didn't really understand the population well, but I think one of the things that you have to learn to do is one, listening to them, right? And paying attention to them. Because when you're doing these small workshops, like when I do workshops for young people, I have Play-Doh on the table. I have fidgets. I have all these things to kind of keep them occupied so they're listening. But I'm also paying attention to what are the things that I say that makes them look up, from coloring. Like if I'm saying something and they say, I'm like, okay, that kid right there really likes the idea of entrepreneurship or likes the idea of whatever it is I'm mentioning. So I think those are the two basic steps: listening and paying very close attention, but then approaching them in the way where you're a little hands-on. Like, okay, I love the True Colors assessment. It's an easy assessment for them to do. They get a chance to see what could work for them. But ultimately, the goal is to really speak with them, listen to them, and pinpoint the things that work. So if a kid tells me, oh, mister, I want to be a journalist. Why do you want to be a journalist? Oftentimes, I find kids want to do things that they're really familiar with. Like kids who have been justice involved, they usually say, I want to be a social worker or a lawyer or a judge. It's because that's what they're familiar with. But they may not really like that. So the why do you want to be a judge? Now we're going to do an assessment online. We're going to do some fun game. We're going to have some kind of workshop. We're going to do something interactive that pulls something out of you. It might even be something as small as an icebreaker. Well, would you like some cool icebreaker to get them interested in a particular field? So now that's the beginning piece of it. Once you get the meat, you get that buy-in, you start doing the real work. You start taking them to events. You start introducing them to people. You start introducing them to the actual field that they're saying they're interested in. And then you talk about that trajectory. You can make this amount of money. You can do it this way. You can go this way. And like I said earlier, it's about building their trajectory with them and not for them. I think that's I find
that part.
I think a lot of professionals get in this work with this kind of like superhero mentality that they have to save these young people. But the kids that come to our programs, the young people that don't need saving, they're there. They're the ones that are showing up. They're not the ones that's like preaching to a choir. So to me, listening to them and helping them build out the trajectory by giving them the small moments where it's like, I noticed that your ears peaked up when I mentioned Sneakers. You want to go with me to the sneaker museum exhibit that's happening in Brooklyn this week? We'll have a trip to the museum. And then from there, what about this do you like? You want to be a sneaker reseller? It sounds like you want to be an entrepreneur. This is what entrepreneurs do. And you keep building and you keep building. And for them, their confidence level grows as an adult who they trust believes in them. And two, they start to recognize the things that they like in real time. Like, shit, excuse my language. I don't know if I can curse on here. My bad.
Me girl.
My bad. They're like, dang, I really love sneakers. I love sneakers. How do I get into this? And Mr. Cooper, he knows that I love sneakers. Maybe he can help me. And then they start coming back and they start listening more. And it just builds that relationship. So building that relationship is important and listening to them. You have to listen to them with more than just your ears.
We got to put that on a shirt somewhere, Daytona, because I feel like every interview has been listen to the young person. And it's not a hard concept, but you won't believe how many people miss listening. Listening.
Yeah. So one is, I'm gonna pause real quick. I'm gonna say you made my day. You made us feel official. When you said, I don't know if we could curse on here, right? I was like, yo, I've heard this on official TV shows and podcasts and radio, so I'm feeling like somebody. But you
guys are somebody. You're doing the work.
Appreciate that. You hit the nail on the head when you spoke specifically about young people just needing to understand who they are, right? Investigating that. I love the True Colors assessment as a starting point for having those conversations. And so you've kind of answered two questions in one, and you've done that several times. So you clearly are a gem in this field. I want to kind of wrap up my final question before Amber transitions with, as a practitioner, right? Somebody that's getting started in the field. I know you said listening is key for them. What is like one or two other things that a new person that's getting into the field should focus on to think about in working with this population?
I think one of the things that's super important that I think a lot of people don't do is check their ego, because I think this work, you really cannot come in here, like I mentioned earlier, with the superhero mentality and that thinking that this work is a thankless job and you do not see your wins every
Very
day.
much so.
Your win may not ever come. You might work with a student for 3-4 years and have them do everything, and then you never see what happens to them next. So I think for a newcomer coming in, really checking your ego and saying, I'm doing this because I love doing this and I want to see people grow. Being able to accept the little light bulbs that go off in their eyes as your wins are really important, because they're the small windows to like, okay, I'm on the right path. I know what I'm doing. And then listening to yourself too, right? Because I think your instinct and your intuition in this work is going to really take you to a new level in terms of how you work with young people. But most importantly, be your most authentic self. Bring your full self to the table. I said this in my LinkedIn interview. I was interviewed for LinkedIn for Pride last year. And one of the things was, what do you think you do best? I am relatable because I'm authentic. I'm not coming in here acting like if I don't know something, I don't know it. Let's look it up together. Let's Google it together. So coming into this with your authentic self, what do you love doing? You love pottery? That's something you can relate to a kid with. You love doodling. You love, I don't know, you have a bunch of things that make you you. And there's so many kids that can relate to that. And if they can't relate to the skill that you bring, they'll relate to the fact that you're being authentic. Because kids pick that up easy. They know when somebody being fake. They know it. And when they think you fake, you're out of here. Nothing you're going to say to them is going to sit on them. It's not going to register. You're done. So come in not expecting to win every battle. Come in enthusiastic, creative. Stay on top of your stuff. If there's new programs around, you're learning these new programs, and then you're listening to your young people. You're connecting with them in the most authentic way, with boundaries, of course, because sometimes you're the same age as some of the kids in the program. So, you know, you want you want to have those, specific boundaries, but be your authentic self. And I think the work will lend itself to you, and you'll be successful in it.
Oh my goodness. See, let me tell you one thing. One thing I'm gonna tell y'all about Miss P. I don't mess with nobody whack. So I'm so excited about this, and I hope y'all got a lot out of here. But like Daytona, I know I see your notes here. So I know he listen. So Daytona does this thing where he kind of like wraps us up, right? And like he's going to like replay those gems, because I don't think you even know what you dropped.
Sometimes
so,
I don't.
Daytona,
I just be talking. It be coming from the heart, though.
Can you let him know what he said? I know, we know, yeah. But we want to make sure like people understand. Like I want you to hear back like what we got from this episode. I'm like, I cannot wait to share this. I'm
glad. I'm very happy to be
child.
here.
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead, J
this is almost
Flora.
like a page of notes. I'm sitting there trying to keep the eye contact. Like it's all
Ah,
right. Let's get with it. When we first kind of started off, you started to kind of frame like the issues. One of the things you said is like pivoting. Well, not before you got into your story. You talked about pivoting when you realized that you needed to do something different, right? As like a thing that was foundational for you as a dancer to now shift into something different. And it's clear that you brought that mindset when you're working with students, right? And getting them to understand that this is a valuable mindset to be able to have. You also spoke about transferable skills and soft skills. That was mentioned a lot of different times, and that you, of course, within your journey, developed these things that was able to allow you to get to other places. And that entrepreneurial endeavors as well. Like you said, you had, was it your cosmetology license? Yeah, and
yes,
then
I
you.
do.
So listen, I love that because I've spoken to a lot of my students, and I'm like, some of y'all here are doing wig installs and doing this, that, and the third, whatever. You're gonna be 8 hours away from here.
Oh,
There's a lot of young women that are gonna want that. So one of my young ladies actually has her own business, and she's been doing her thing phenomenally and still going to college, right? Um, you also talked about college and careers uh, programs need to be integrated in the school, not like an afterthought, right? That's one of the barriers and challenges that have been happening. Um, one of the things that was a profound thing that was said was when students don't know what they're doing next, they do things to sabotage themselves and don't move forward, right? That's part of some of the issues that are happening within this space. Also, funding is an issue because this year you have money to kind of do these amazing things, but there's a lack of sustainability, right? Because next year it may not be the case. Um, One of the biggest things that you said that resonated with me was that you talked about that gender is not a barrier. Those are things that make you unique. Your sexual preferences, your sexual identity, your race, all those things are the things that make you unique. But racism, right, and the patriarchy, those are the things that are systemic barriers that impact a lot of young people in the spaces that we operate in, right? Colleges are not ready for students in alternative programs. That hit me uh, because it I know I need to do more work in this space, especially as related to this population. So like we're preparing them for an environment that does not prepare for them, and that just seems like an injustice within itself. Um,
if I can interrupt
yes,
really
please.
quickly, because I really would like to expound on that. There's a few things in relation to that. Like even when you use the common application, they don't even talk. They don't have the language for students coming from alternative program. They ask for GPAs and things like that. The language is not even specific for students coming from transfer schools or alternative programs. And then when you talk about the L population too, who are coming with foreign diplomas trying to enter college and career readiness, who come through our pipeline through alternative programs, they're not even it's not even an afterthought. It's not even on the radar. So I think there's several things in
Listen,
relation to that that I just wanted to maybe mention really quickly. Sorry about
No,
that. Keep talking about me. I love hearing the things that I've said that are
I'm only
amazing.
halfway. I'm only halfway through, and the good thing about it that I think Amber and I are realizing of how this is growing is that we're having people come on that are going to be specifically talking about some of the very same things that you mentioned as well, because we're trying to shine light onto these populations. But I'm not through with you yet, right? Like we're halfway through. But you also mentioned when you're talking about how to support students, giving them realistic expectations and timelines so that because oftentimes they get frustrated. Amber used that analogy, right? Like if their expectation is in the microwave and that the microwave dings and they open it up and the lasagna is still cold, they're off of it, right? They're like, nah, I'm not messing with
Hmm.
this. I've had it in long enough. Let's keep it moving. Um, an idle mind is the devil's playground. So you brought church into this space. You brought
I'll be trying not to, but be on the side, on the
I get it.
shoulder.
You brought church to the space. So we need to make sure that students are occupied as they try to establish their plan, specifically thinking about the unique, the I wouldn't even call it a challenge, but we understand that the cycle in which students that are entering alternative programs is significantly different than regular programs, right? Like they're not necessarily operating in
Hmm.
semesters. So they may start the school in the middle of the year, they may graduate at a certain point in time. So we need to make sure that if they can't start their program in the fall, what is it that we can connect them through in the meantime? Um,
Absolutely.
and everything you do is a transferable skill. Students need to have these quick wins, right? Have them see themselves in the light that they have not seen before, right? And this is something that we've seen in another episode before where somebody said, like, hey, having them see like this is where you might have felt that you were at your lowest, right? But you got these wins. Let's look at it all together in the sequence now so that they can really see like, man, you put in the work and look at this progress. And building the trajectory with them and not for them was one of the prominent things that stuck to me. And lastly,
That's got
there
to
has
be
to
a
be a
sound
soundbite.
bite. We got to use that because I think people get that one all the way messed up. It ain't about
Not
you.
about
It's
you at
about them.
all.
There we
Why your
go.
hands on it?
The last one to wrap up. Professionals do not get into they should not get into this work to be superheroes, right? Students don't need saving, and they don't need you to preach to the choir. So the thing which Amber just stated, and you of course have expounded upon, is they need to check their egos. It's a thankless job. Also, practitioners need to listen to their instincts and intuitions, and most importantly, be their authentic selves, which you have been completely in this space, and we greatly appreciate you. Amber.
No problem at all.
Listen, like I'm so y'all. Listen, okay. Thank you, Adon. Because like I think these are the things, especially as us as professionals, right? Like the things that like are heavy on our mind, and like to have people like echoing exactly like what we think and feel. Like there was nothing really left to say, right? Because this is what it is, right? And I think this interview is going to shine a light on so many things, right? Like especially when you touched on the situation with like students leaving with the different diplomas and like the time that they leave and things like that, things that people don't think about or think about as an afterthought when it comes to this population. I think this is really going to help a lot of people to do their work better. So thank you so much for being with us. Is there any place like do you want to share your LinkedIn? Like how
Yeah,
can people connect with you?
please connect with me on my LinkedIn profile, which is my first and last name, ADON COOPER. You can add me on LinkedIn. Do not find me on social media. That is my private space. But you can add me on my
Period.
LinkedIn. I'm totally okay with it. Boundaries. Boundaries are
Facts.
important, you know?
Respect.
So,
That part.
yeah, please look out for me. There's always things that I'm doing. I also was featured in NBC for out college students. I did an interview with them a month ago. So you can also see me in that article as well. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Let me say one last thing.
Listen, we got a whole celebrity on here. LinkedIn, NBC. Come
You
on.
know,
I'm gonna say one last thing.
Something
Amber made
like
this statement that she doesn't mess with black people, and it's clearly evident. So
period.
we've done a couple of these episodes, and there's been Amber's direct connects, and Amber knows this by now, but I'm super competitive, so I need to make sure I start bringing in my cool people, right? Because
you got to.
listen, Amber, I'm coming for you because this was fire. We've had a couple of others.
Thank you.
So you're on the scoreboard. I know we ain't competing, but I'm competing. Fire.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be. I'm a hard act
He's
to
always
follow though, so I'm gonna just
competing.
say I'm a hard act to follow. So you got your competition
Especially
ready.
making
Yeah,
lobster,
yeah.
Thank you.
langosta.
Langoste, come on.
Langosta. There we go. Respect to you, Adon. We appreciate you.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful afternoon,
You
everybody.
too.
See you guys soon.